Hello and welcome to this session on your product range. My name is Alison and I work for White Rose Retail Consultants, and I've been in the retail business for 30 plus years, so quite a lot of experience. So I'm here to try and guide you through some of the trials and tribulations of running your own retail business. So we're going to cover your ideal customer, core ranges, seasonal ranges, windows of opportunity, entry and exit plans, the 80-20 rule, pricing, supply chain, stock turn and liquidation. Now you might know who your ideal customer is, you may not, but you should do, because everything that you do should be directed towards your ideal customer. Now HubSpot have got a quote about what an ideal customer is. It's a customer profile, or a consumer profile rather, and it's a detailed description of your current customers. In a customer profile, you're identifying purchasing behaviours, pain points, psychographical data and demographical data with the intent of targeting similar customers in your sales and marketing campaigns. So understanding your customer it's the key to selecting your product ranges for the right people. It's the key to delivering the right service. It's the key to everything. It's the basis for everything that you do. So what sort of information are you looking at for your ideal customer? You really want to get under the skin of who they are, and that involves being quite nosy really. So how old are they? Where do they live? What do they do for a job? Where do they go food shopping? What car do they drive? Where do they like to go on holiday? What newspaper do they read? What social media do they use? Do they have children or grandchildren? What about a pet? Where do they buy the furniture from? What's their favourite clothing brand? How old are they, approximately? We don't want to know. For ladies, maybe over chunks of time, not specifics. Are they carnivore, vegetarian, vegan? What's their favourite TV programme? What hobbies do they have? You might think that that's a bit intrusive, but actually what you're trying to do is you're trying to distill everything about that person so that you can make sure that the delivery of everything that you do is very targeted, that the message is very on point, that it's relevant to your ideal customer. So a customer profile that we've put together based on me, and some of the information is true, some of the information might not be true, but we'll use it as a basis. So Alison, she's 50 plus, she's got a partner and 2 stepchildren, and she lives in a semi-detached house in a rural market town with a rescue dog. She drives an electric car and she gets her news off apps on her Apple phone, and she's vegetarian. She shops at Marks and Spencer for her clothes and shoes, but she'll also use other brands. Her food shopping is done at Tesco, and she prefers known brands to own brands. And she reads a lot of books, but not magazines or newspapers. She uses Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn, but not TikTok and not Twitter. She loves crafting and trying out new things, and has a liking for stationery items like journals and pens. She fundraises for charity and is a local counsellor. Now that might seem like a lot of data about somebody, but when you're targeting somebody with your product, when you're targeting them with your products, with your marketing messages, this is the type of information that you need to make sure that your message is clear and precise. So, what's your core range? So what is a core range? Well, it's the foundation on which your business is built. It's the products that your ideal customer expects you to stock. So if you think about a supermarket, you expect a supermarket to stock milk, bread, sugar, coffee, tea. They're 365 products, so they're a long-term range. They're going to be in stock all of the time for months, years to come. They're often a considered purchase, and you've got to be clear about what your core range is. If you're a gift shop, for instance, your core range might be things that you sell day in, day out, week in, week out, that are relative to the location that you live in. If you're a clothing store, they might be white t-shirts or white shirts. Short-sleeved in summer, long-sleeved in winter. That's your core range. People expect you to sell that product. Then there's a seasonal range. So the seasonal range are non-core products that are only stocked at specific times of the year, like summer or Christmas. The products complement your core range, and they could be a completely new category as long as there's a logic. And they're a medium-term range. So you're in there, you've got a range that's going to last for maybe 4 to 6 months, depending on the time of year. A Christmas range, for instance, generally you would bring it in at the end of September into October, depending on how keen you are about promoting Christmas, and you would have it in until December. So there's about 4 months worth of stock. So it's a consideration, but it doesn't have to be the same type of products that your core range is made of. It can be complementary products, as long as there's a logic there. And then you've got your windows of opportunity. So your windows of opportunity are things like Easter, Halloween, Valentine's Day. They're short, sharp periods of time where you can take advantage of things. It might be a local event. And these products, again, complement your core range. So they could be a completely new category, again, as long as there's a logic to them. So you wouldn't have a gift shop and then suddenly start selling milk. You wouldn't have a clothes shop and suddenly start selling engine parts. There has to be a logic. And it's a short-term single purchase range, so you're buying a smaller amount of stock that you aim to get rid of in a very short space of time. It's usually constrained by time, so you don't want Christmas stock hanging around at Easter. You don't want Valentine's hanging around at Halloween, and so on. So it's short and sharp. And the importance of selecting your best product range is self-discipline. We're all, maybe it's just me, but lots of us are distracted by shiny things. We see something and think, oh, I like that. I'll just bring that into my range. Don't do that. Think about everything that you're doing. Don't add something to your range because you like it. Add it to the range because it's something that your core customer is going to buy. Which category does a purchase fit into? Is it a core range? Is it a seasonal range? Or is it a window of opportunity? And that will guide you as to the quantities that you're going to buy and where you're going to buy and when you're going to buy. And buy the right amount based on that category type. You need to have an entry and an exit plan for all your ranges, particularly your short-term and medium-term ranges, so your seasonal and your events ranges. Because your shop, it doesn't have elastic walls. You can't just add another range of products on top of what you've already got without losing something to make room for that product. So how are you going to create the space to fit those products? That's your entry plan. How are you going to create the space? Are you going to take things off sale? Are you going to have a sale to get rid of the stock, to release the space? You need to think about all of these things. How will you fill the space when you've sold those products through? So it's all great making room for bringing new products in, but when you've sold them, you've got to have something to fill that space, otherwise you'll be left with empty spaces, and you can't sell empty space. And you need to create a plan to bring the stock in and to exit it at the end. Now, the 80-20 rule is also known as the Pareto principle. And that states that 80% of your sales are going to come from 20% of your products. So do you know which 20% of your products are creating the 80% of your sales? Do you monitor your sales? If you understand what, how and why these products are creating these sales, it allows you to focus on ensuring that you're always in stock and that your stock is visible and available to your customers. And by having better availability, better visibility, you'll increase your sales. Pricing is an interesting one. You should know the cost of goods sold for every single one of your items, because if you don't know the cost of goods sold, you won't be able to calculate your margin. And if you decide that you want to reduce the price, you don't know how far to reduce the price if you don't know what your margin is. So the cost, there's different types of pricing. So there's a cost plus pricing, that's quite difficult to say. Cost plus pricing takes the cost of goods sold and then it adds a percentage profit margin onto it to calculate the selling price. So often with fashion it might be 75% on top of your cost price. With other products it might be 50%. So if your cost of goods sold is £1 and you're adding 50%, then it's £2. So that when you do a reduction down to half price, you are at very minimum recouping the cost of those goods. But you need to know all those calculations to be able to do that. Penetration pricing is having a competitive entry price, so a starting price to go into the market that's really competitive, that you will put up after a period of time. So it's kind of like an opening offer. And then you build interest in the product, and when you've built a little bit of interest, up goes the prices. Price skimming is the opposite to that, so that's where you set a high entry-level price and then eventually you lower it. So think about some of your tech products that you've got the early adopters who want the latest version of the mobile phone, for instance. They're prepared to pay top dollar for it, but you know that after that initial latest version, all the other versions below it are going to be cheaper. They're going to be more accessible to more people. So that's price skimming. Competitive pricing takes a look at all the prices that your competitors are selling for similar goods and prices accordingly, so you're competitive within your local marketplace. And the decision to discount or to offer promotions is going to depend on your ideal customer. Discounting might work well for volume products, so if you sell cheap and high, so you're selling in volume for cheap prices, then discounting works well for that type of thing. But if you're selling a designer handbag or something of a similar nature, if you start to offer discounts or reductions, then you potentially run the risk of devaluing your brand. So it depends on what products you're selling and who you're selling them to. You don't need to have the same pricing strategy across all of your products. So not everything in your shop needs to have a margin plus type of pricing structure. Different product categories might respond better to different types of pricing structure. So you can have different strategies for different product groups. And your pricing strategy that you choose to adopt will also affect your liquidation strategy. So if you decide that at the end of a season you want to cut price all of the goods from that season, particularly in fashion, then if you've decided that you're doing penetration pricing, that might affect the level of discount that you're able to offer versus if you'd done a margin, a cost plus pricing model. And it's about more than selling more. It's about bundling or multi-buys that can be part of your pricing strategy. But the impact of your profit margin should always be monitored. So you can do all of these different types of activity, but at the end of the day, it's how it affects your bottom line that you need to keep an eye on. So then we talk about your supply chain. So have you got all your eggs in one basket? What does your supply chain look like? Are you getting all of your supplies from one particular supplier, or are you using several different suppliers for different categories and spreading the risk across a number of different people? How vulnerable is your supply chain? At the moment, we know that we've got challenges with supply chain in a lot of areas. So how does that impact on your business specifically, and what alternatives do you have available to you to mitigate the risk of your current supply chain? Have you got alternative suppliers that you could use? Are there economies of scale that could be made by collaborating with other retailers? And that seems a little bit like nonsensical to work with your competitors in effect. But really, if you can work together and mitigate some of this risk, surely that's better than fighting the fight alone. And can the circular economy feature in your supply chain? Circular economy is all about keeping things in circulation for longer, so it's repairing, it's recycling. So can that feature in any of your work, any of your range? Stock turn. Do you know how often your stock turns over in your store? There's a calculation that you can make that guides you as to whether or not you've got too much stock or not enough. So holding the right amount of stock to maximise your sales is critical. Holding too much slow-moving stock, it ties up all your capital and you've got nothing to buy new stock with. You're stuck with the stuff that's not selling. The stock turn value is the number of times that your entire inventory value is sold within a specific time frame. So it's your total sales divided by your average stock on hand. So say your inventory value is £1,000. These are really rubbish figures, but it's easy to calculate. £1,000 is your total stock on hand. Your total sales are £5,000, so your stock turn is 5,000 divided by 1,000. So that's a bad example because your average stock on hand should be between 2 and 4. So 5 will give us an indication of where we're at with the stock. So lower than 2 means that you've got too much stock. You're not selling it quickly enough, or you've got the wrong type of stock. So it's tying up your capital. It might mean that you've got the wrong pricing strategy for your stock. Again, if you've got the wrong pricing strategy, it might affect your sales. Your marketing might need to be changed. You might need to change it up. Think about your ideal customer again. Are you targeting your ideal customer? Is that why your sales on a specific area are poor? So higher than a 4 is going to mean that you're understocked on some of your key products, or you're buying in insufficient quantities. So you're going to miss out on potential sales, and you don't want to miss out on potential sales for sure. Higher than a 4 might mean that your order quantities and frequencies need to be reviewed because you don't want to miss out on potential sales. And this is going to have a potential positive impact on your supply chain costs, because if you order more frequently, then you might get better discounts for delivery costs, etc. And if you're buying in higher quantities, then cost prices might be affected. And you can do this calculation on the whole of your stock, or you can do it on specific categories. You could do it from the whole stock and then do it again on your smaller categories, and the ones will be highlighted that impact your stock turn the most. Doing the calculation on a specific category will help you identify which ones are not working for you. And they're ones that, in effect, you want to get shot of. You don't want them in your range if they're not performing, because space is money, and if you've got an underperforming product range, it's tying up space that could be used much better for better return on your investment. And do the calculation on a regular basis. Don't just do it once and then think that all your results are going to be the same. Do it on a regular basis so that you can monitor the ups and downs of your stock turn, because seasonally there might be fluctuations that you want to look at and see how that impacts on all of your calculations. Stock liquidation. So that's when a product or a product range comes to the end of its life within your store. So how do you plan to get rid of it? Ideally, you want to liquidate your stock at full margin, so you want to manage it through the ordering process so that it naturally peters off towards the end of its life, so you can continue to sell it at full margin. But if that's not possible, then are you going to have a sale? Are you going to do discounts? Are you going to run offers? Are you going to do a gift with purchase? There's all sorts of different ways of exiting your stock, but you need to bear in mind, once again, your ideal customer, what they expect, and that will form the strategy that you adopt for liquidation. But you do need to think about it because it will affect your margin. And then linked to stock liquidation and linked to your stock turn is stock take. So how often do you stock take? Do you stock take at all? You may not stock take, but I suggest that you do. So knowing how much stock you've got is so useful for a number of different reasons. and we've talked about many of them, knowing your stock turn, knowing how much stock you've got from an insurance valuation, from an ordering perspective, lots of different reasons to know your inventory. But how do you manage your stock when it comes in? Do you add the shipments onto an Excel document? Do you have a book that you add your stock orders to? How do you manage it? It's really useful when you do a inventory, a stock take, is a different word for it, inventory, particularly those items that are prone to damage or prone to theft. You may do a general stock take once a year, and that's sufficient, but on your vulnerable products or your best-selling products, you may wish to do a stock take on a more frequent basis so that you can monitor any damages, any losses. So takeaways for this session, we've covered quite a lot, but takeaways from this session: always select your ranges based on your ideal customer. Don't get distracted by shiny things. It's not about you, it's about your ideal customer. Work out which products are the 20% of your range that will deliver the 80% of your sales, because they're the critical ones. Have an entry and an exit plan in place, and manage your stock processes to ensure you've got the right stock in the right place at the right time. Review your supply chain to see if the changes can be made to optimise performance. Price your products at the right level. Create your pricing policy in relation to how you set your prices and whether you offer discounts, etc. Different categories can have different pricing strategies. Know your stock turn and monitor your stock turn, preferably by category, to identify any underperforming or overperforming ranges. Work out your liquidation policy, and complete a stock take to start monitoring your stock levels and performance. So that covers your product range. If you've got any questions, then you can email alison.laws@yngrowthhub.com. Thank you.